She grabbed my arm before I reached my car. Not my sleeve, my arm. Her fingers wrapped around my wrist like she was trying to stop something that had already started moving. And when I turned around, she wasn't looking at me the way she usually did. That careful, composed, slightly superior look she'd spent 3 years perfecting. She was looking at me the way people look when they've run out of time to pretend. "Don't accept that offer," she said. Any reasonable person would have assumed she meant the job, the promotion, the thing I'd spent 4 months quietly grinding toward and finally received in a formal email that morning with a relocation clause buried in paragraph 6. Any reasonable person would have heard that sentence and thought, she's worried about the project handover. She's being professional. She's being responsible. I did not think that. Because Nadia Reyes had never once grabbed my arm in 3 years. And people who are worried about project handovers don't look like that. I looked down at her hand. She looked down at her hand. Neither of us moved. That was the moment I understood that the offer was only half of what I was being asked to decide. My name is Daniel Osei. I'm 34. I worked in operations management for a mid-sized logistics firm in Columbus, Ohio. I coordinated freight schedules, smoothed out supplier disputes, and spent a significant portion of my adult life inside a building that smelled faintly of industrial coffee and whatever someone had microwaved at 11 in the morning. The work was unglamorous. It paid well. It required exactly enough of my brain to keep me from going somewhere worse. I had been at the company for 6 years when Nadia Reyes transferred from the Chicago office and sat down at the desk across the open floor plan from mine. Her name was Nadia. She was 31. She ran the client relations team, which meant she spent most of her day solving problems that other people had created, and doing it with a calm so precise it occasionally looked like contempt. She had dark hair that she kept in the same braid every day, a coffee order she never once deviated from, and a way of reading a room in under 15 seconds that I found, in equal measure, impressive and faintly unsettling. She owned a single desk plant, a small succulent. She had named it Gerald. She mentioned Gerald exactly once, in a meeting, without context, when someone suggested the office could use more greenery, and then never spoke of him again. That was the first thing about Nadia Reyes that I couldn't stop thinking about. We were not friends. We were what you might call professionally adjacent. We crossed paths in meetings, shared a floor, occasionally ended up in the kitchen at the same time and exchanged the kind of polite conversation that functions as a social contract between two people who are both too busy to be rude. She was sharp. She was efficient. She had opinions about how the freight delay reports were structured, and she was not shy about sharing them, including once in a meeting I was leading, which I found irritating, and then correct, and then irritating again because it was correct. What we were, if I am being precise about it, was two people who had spent 3 years carefully not becoming more than what we were. I had told myself several reasons why. The professional ones were easy. The honest one was harder. She was the kind of person who made you feel like you had to earn things, and I wasn't entirely sure I had. The job offer came from our competitor, Regional VP of Operations, covering 3 markets, full relocation package to Denver. It was the kind of thing that doesn't appear twice. I'd had a quiet conversation with their recruiter in November, a formal interview in January, and by the second week of March, I had an offer letter sitting in my email with a 72-hour decision window. I told 2 people. My brother, who told me to take it. My colleague Marcus, who told me to take it, and also to negotiate the signing bonus upward, because Marcus approached all decisions with the strategic instinct of someone who had read too many self-help books and found them deeply validating. I told no one else. Not Nadia. I don't know what I was protecting. She wasn't mine to protect anything from. We shared a floor. We argued about reporting formats. She brought Gerald in on Mondays and watered him on Fridays with a small blue bottle she kept in her desk drawer. And I had noticed this because I had, without ever formally admitting it to myself, been paying attention to Nadia Reyes for a very long time. I submitted my decision deadline extension request on a Thursday morning. I planned to give them my answer Friday. Thursday evening, I stayed late. The floor had emptied by 7. I was finishing the last of a freight audit, the kind of work that requires enough concentration to make you forget to go home. when I heard movement from the other side of the floor. Nadia was still at her desk. She didn't look up. She was working through something on her screen, one hand wrapped around her coffee cup, the other moving across her keyboard with the focused, unhurried rhythm of someone who had been at this for hours and expected to be at it for several more. The small blue watering bottle sat next to Gerald, which meant it was Thursday and she had already been here long enough to remember. I should have left. I had a coat and a completed audit and a decision to sleep on. I walked over and set a coffee on the corner of her desk. Gas station coffee from the machine down the hall. The terrible kind, the kind that tasted like it had given up and accepted its fate. She looked up at it, then at me. "Peace offering?" she said. "Solidarity," I said. She looked at it for one more second. Then she picked it up. "You know this coffee is genuinely bad." "I know." "I'm going to drink it anyway." "I know." She almost smiled. The key word there is almost. With Nadia, almost was the whole vocabulary. I went back to my desk. I finished the audit. I left at 8:15 without looking at her again, which was a decision I made consciously and stuck to, which told me something I did not examine closely enough until later. Friday morning I came in and her desk plant was gone. Not Gerald. Gerald was fine, still sitting in his spot with an air of succulent dignity. The small framed photo she kept on the far corner of her desk, the one I had never been close enough to see clearly, was gone. The blue watering bottle was in the drawer instead of out. Her second monitor was unplugged. Not all of it, not obviously, but enough. I noticed. I sat down, opened my email, and noticed across 40 feet of open office that something on Nadia Reyes's desk was different, and I filed it somewhere I did not intend to examine. I had a 9 o'clock, then a call with a freight partner who had questions about Q2 projections, lunch at my desk, a 2 o'clock that ran long. By 3, I had forgotten about the photo, or told myself I had, which is not the same thing. At 4:15, Marcus stopped by my desk, sat down in my spare chair uninvited, a habit I had given up trying to stop, and said, without preamble, "Did you know Nadia got a competitive offer?" I looked at him. "Chicago office wants her back," he said. "Apparently they've been after her since December. She gave HR her decision this morning." He said something after that. I don't remember what. I was looking across the floor at her desk. She wasn't there. She was in a meeting, or the kitchen, or somewhere else entirely. And her desk sat with its partially cleared surface and its small succulent and its unplugged monitor like a sentence that had been started and not finished. I had a decision deadline in 18 hours. I spent the rest of the afternoon not thinking about it, which is to say I thought about nothing else. 5:30, the floor clearing out. I shut down my computer, put on my coat, picked up my bag. Normal, automatic. The motion of someone who had made a decision, or was pretending he had. I was in the elevator when I realized I'd left my phone on my desk. The irritating kind of realization. Not important enough to be catastrophic, too inconvenient to ignore. I went back up. The floor was almost empty. Almost. Nadia was standing at her desk, her coat already on, the small framed photo now in her hand. She was wrapping it in a piece of cloth, carefully, methodically, the way she did everything. She didn't hear me come in, or she did and decided not to react. With Nadia, it was sometimes impossible to tell. I got my phone. I should have left. "You're taking things home," I said. She looked up. Something moved through her face and was managed. "Reorganizing," she said. "Marcus told me about Chicago." A pause. She looked back down at the photo, finished wrapping it, set it in her bag with the precision of someone buying time. "He shouldn't have. He shouldn't do most things he does," I said. "He does them anyway." She didn't smile. She zipped her bag, straightened, looked at me directly. That was the thing about Nadia. When she finally looked at you, she looked at you. No hedging, no soft edges. You got the full thing. "Are you going?" she said. It was a strange question. We were both clearly going. "To Denver," she said, and then she stopped, like she hadn't meant to say that second part. The room did something. I'm not sure what. The air changed key. How did you... I started. You had a call with their recruiter in November, she said. You took it in the stairwell. Sound carries. A beat. I wasn't listening. I happened to be there. And you didn't say anything. It wasn't my business. She picked up her bag. It still isn't. She walked past me toward the elevator. Professional. Composed. Nadia Reyes, client relations manager, perfectly self-contained. I stood there holding my phone like a man who had just lost an argument he hadn't known he was having. I followed her to the elevator. We waited. The doors opened. We got in. She pressed L. The doors closed. 23 floors of silence that had weight. The parking lot was cold. March in Ohio, which means the calendar has declared spring and the weather has declined to participate. The cars were spread thin at this hour, the fluorescent overheads casting everything in that particular shade of yellow that makes the world look slightly more honest than it is. I was walking toward my car. She was walking toward hers. We were walking in different directions. That was the correct ending. Then her hand closed around my wrist. I turned around. Her face was doing something it had never done in 3 years of meetings and kitchen conversations and late evenings and gas station coffee shared in the unspoken language of two people who had decided not to say the obvious thing. Her face was doing the thing where the composure goes, just briefly, just enough. "Don't accept that offer," she said. I looked at her hand. I looked at her face. "Nadia, you don't have to say anything," she said, quickly, which was almost funny because that was supposed to be my line. "If this is wrong, we can go back to our cars, and it was cold, and we both have early meetings. We can do that." She was giving me the exit. Her hands, she'd let go of my wrist, both her hands were now free, and she was standing in the cold parking lot under the yellow lights offering me the door. She didn't want the door. I could see that. The door was there because she was, underneath all the competence and the careful composure, and Gerald the succulent, the kind of person who did not take things from people. She waited until things were given. I had been looking at her desk for 3 years. I had gotten gas station coffee at 7 in the evening on a Thursday and walked across an empty floor to put it on the corner of her desk and called it solidarity because it was the word that fit inside what I was allowed to say. "I haven't accepted it," I said. She looked at me carefully. "You have until tomorrow." "I know." "It's a good offer, Daniel." "I know that too." She was quiet. The parking lot was quiet. Somewhere 2 rows over, a car started and drove away, and then it was just us, and the cold, and the yellow lights. "You came back for your phone," she said, like she was working something out. "Yeah. You leave your phone on your desk when you're thinking about something." I stopped. "You did it in November," she said, "when you were deciding whether to take the recruiter's call, and the Monday after the January interview, and today." She looked at me steadily. I noticed things. I had spent 3 years thinking I was the one paying attention. "I changed your name in my phone," she said, quieter. Quieter than anything she'd said at full volume. "After the Thursday before Christmas, when you stayed late and we ended up talking about nothing in the kitchen for an hour and a half, and you walked me to my car because it was icy. I changed it that night. And then I kept almost changing it back, and I never did." "What did you change it to?" My voice came out wrong. I didn't fix it. She looked away, looked back. Something I wasn't ready to say out loud. A pause. "I think I am now." She showed me her phone, my name in her contacts, and under it, in the display name field, 2 words that were not my name. I won't tell you what they said. Some things are only true when they're said to the right person, and they're said private. I will tell you that something in my chest shifted. Not dramatically, just entirely. "I've been watching you water a succulent on a specific schedule," I said, "for 3 years, and thinking about it more than I have any right to." The sound she made wasn't quite a laugh. It was something softer, something she'd been keeping. "Gerald is very consistent. He creates reliable moments." "Did you name him strategically?" I named him Gerald because he looked like a Gerald. She paused. The consistency was a coincidence. Another pause. I noticed you noticed. That landed. Quietly. The way things do when they've been true for a long time and only now have permission to be said. I reached out and took her hand. Not her wrist this time. Hers had released mine, so I offered mine, open, and she looked at it, and then at me, and then she put her hand in mine with the careful deliberateness of someone who means it. The cold was still there, the yellow lights, the parking lot. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it. A look crossed her face, faintly exasperated, unmistakably fond. "It's my sister," she said. "She has a radar." "Is she going to be difficult?" "Catastrophically." She looked back up at me. "She's going to say I took long enough." "Did you?" She considered this. "Yes," she said. "Probably." She texted her sister back one-handed, not looking at her phone, which meant she was looking at me, and that was its own kind of answer to every question I had been sitting with for 3 years. 3 months later, she watered Gerald on my kitchen windowsill because Gerald had been relocated along with everything else, and I made actual coffee, the kind that required a machine and intention, and watched her do it with the same precise, unhurried rhythm she brought to everything. "You know the thing I keep thinking?" she said, not turning around. "Which thing?" "You went back for your phone." "I did." "You leave your phone on your desk when you're thinking about something." She turned around, leaned against the counter, blue watering bottle in hand. "You were thinking about me." I had poor survival instincts around Reyes women. This had been statistically established. "I was thinking about you," I said. She accepted this with the expression of someone filing information they had already suspected was accurate. "Good," she said. And that was Nadia. That was the whole of it. Not a performance of feeling, just the word, clean and direct, meaning exactly what it said. Nothing important had appeared overnight. The two of us had existed across 40 feet of open office floor for 3 years, paying attention to small things, a schedule, a coffee, a phone left behind. And what had looked like professional courtesy had been, underneath, a long and careful and quietly mutual conversation. I didn't fall in love with Nadia Reyes when she finally said the thing she'd been sitting with. I fell in love because she waited until she knew she could say it honestly. And then she stood in a cold parking lot under yellow lights and said it anyway, and trusted me to do the rest. 2 years later, when people ask how we met, I say, the same office, same floor, 3 years. She says, he left his phone on his desk and I was paying attention. People think that's a strange answer. She lets them think that. She has never once explained Gerald to anyone who wasn't there, and she has no intention of starting. I think that's exactly right. What would you have done if a coworker grabbed your hand in the parking lot and said that? And have you ever stayed quiet about something? Not because you didn't feel it, but because you were waiting for the right moment to be brave enough to say it. Tell me your story in the comments. If you liked this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.